So good afternoon. My name is James Ginther. I am the Associate Director of the Center for Medieval Studies. And I'm kind of chairing this meeting because I'm also chair of the admissions committee and the advisor for MA students in our unit. I'm delighted that all of you have joined us. Hopefully we'll have a few more and we'll have a good session. And I teach online quite a bit, so this is kind of not an uncommon thing, but it always takes a little bit to get used to. A little bit just about myself. I am trained as an intellectual historian who's pretended to be a theologian through most of my career in order to get a paycheck, but I do the history of theology. I hold tenure at the University of St. Michael's College, which is one of the federated colleges at the University of Toronto. I'm the faculty of theology there. But I've been the director of the center for about 4 years. I work primarily in 12th and 13th century history of theology and intellectual history, and I'm also interested in the history of science. So I just one kind of the many number of medievalists within the University of Toronto. I think we have over 60 on our list of medievalists. Obviously not all 60 teach, but we have a good array of those who do teach, and we really do cover the broad areas of research in medieval studies, and I'll let Dr. Brilli talk about that a little bit more. So we'll do a couple of general welcomes, and let me start with that general welcome by kind of walking through who's here. Claire, why don't you start, Claire, and introduce yourself?
I will. Hello, I'm Claire Davis. I am a current third-year PhD student at the Center for Medieval Studies. My studies focus on how Old English poetry and weaving are complementary crafts. I'm interested in how text is material and how material can be textual as well. I'm also serving this year as the student executive chair, which you will hear a little bit more about in my section, but that basically means that I'm a ambassador to the faculty and to the students as well. So it's lovely to meet you all.
Thanks, Claire. Jessica?
Hi, I'm Jessica Lockhart. I am a literary historian with an interest in everyday wonder and the history of riddles. My role at the University of Toronto is as head of research for something called the Old Books New Science Lab, which I'll tell you about a bit more. And specifically, we work for a grant called Hidden Stories, New Approaches to the Local and Global History of the Book. I graduated from CMS in 2017, but I'm still kicking around at U of T.
Thanks, Jessica. Killian, you're next.
Hi, everyone. I'm Killian O'Hogan. I'm a faculty member at Center for Medieval Studies. My teaching and my research mostly relate to Latin. So I teach in our core Latin program, and my own research is on Latin literature of late antiquity and the early Middle Ages.
Kara.
Oh, hi. I'm Kara Gaston. I'm PhD coordinator here at the Center for Medieval Studies. My research focuses on late medieval English literature, including some source study, Italian and classical sources in particular. I'm currently working on a project that has to do with astronomy in late medieval literature, especially Chaucer, and I'll have more to say to you shortly.
Very good. Thank you, Karen. And Terry.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. My name is Terry Louisy. I'm the graduate administrator here at the center. I have been at the university for quite a while, working both as an administrator and studying as a student. Got a Master of Arts in Education. And I focused on inclusion and online learning literacy. And here I support course enrollment, course scheduling, registration, funding and awards, and also admissions. So I'll be talking about the application a little bit later.
Perfect. Thank you, Terry. Elisa.
Oh, I wasn't expecting this. Hi, everyone. Welcome. My name is Elisa Brilli, and I'm currently serving as the director of the Center for Medieval Studies. This is, I think, my third year. And prior to that, I was the PhD coordinator for a while. So the position that now Kara has, which also makes me very much interested, in student life and academic progress and everything that has to do with the student experience within the program. In terms of my secular life, so what I do when I'm not serving for the center, I'm a scholar of medieval Italian literature, mainly. I'm a Dante scholar, but my training was somehow interdisciplinary because I have a first degree in philology and literature and the second one in medieval cultural history, which also says you already something about, the vision I have for the center and the importance of interdisciplinarity around here.
This is one of the things that I love personally about medieval studies is its interdisciplinarity, and that we can learn from one another. And it's a kind of a culture we really foster here. We have people interested in the MA and the PhD program. One of the things I always say at the very beginning is that when you're in our classrooms or in our common rooms or any part of the center, we don't make a distinction between MA and PhD students. You're all kind of, at the same level, opportunities to learn from one another. Each will bring their different strengths and even sometimes their weaknesses to class, and as an opportunity to learn from one another. And so it's just exciting to hear all the possible interest here, and I just can imagine what next year's cohort is going to look like because of it. It really does excite me. But I thought we'd start off, with Claire, maybe talking about kind of student life here. It's not something we see as simply peripheral or marginal. It's actually a core component of how we create kind of a center for learning. So Claire, why don't you talk for a few minutes?
Sure, and I'm grateful that you've already started by mentioning that there's a real emphasis among the student body not to distinguish between master students and PhD students. We are a small enough community and an interdisciplinary community such that we really do try to rely on each other. It's amazing, and I've seen it happen in my own experience here, what conversations in the Great Hall, which is a common space we have behind me physically right now, where often people meet to get their lunch or meet before class, especially Latin. But seeing those conversations birth new partnerships or just simply make someone reconsider their own research in a new and exciting way. And that's one of the great strengths of this community here, personally. I did not do my master's here. I did my master's elsewhere. And so it's really an exciting thing to witness, having seen a different graduate program and within a discipline, so having their own way of doing things. But I value the interdisciplinary nature of the program here. Something else I want to mention is, very briefly, I'm sure it will come up elsewhere, but I mentioned Latin, and the center's focus on Latin as a language that both master students and PhD students learn means that that's another way in which students get to create communities across perhaps program lines or perhaps across disciplinary lines as well. Since most people are taking Latin and Latin's always held at 1 o'clock, it's very easy to get into study groups with people that you wouldn't necessarily otherwise meet, and to then bond over your frustrations with the language, as they're prone to come up as with any language. So that's a large part of student life. I mentioned briefly that I'm part of the student executive committee. There's 3 students in charge of helping run social events. So while I'm the chair and I serve a ambassadorial role, for instance, later next week, there's going to be a post-Halloween party for all the students to go to. We set aside budget for events like this. And so as much as we're here to do our job, which is learning and producing research, the student committee is also very much dedicated to finding ways to relax. It is not preferable or profitable, honestly, to work 100% every day of the week. And we know that, and we try to create opportunities where we can all rest together and have some fun. Otherwise, I'm trying to think of if there's anything I've left out, Jim, that you think's important. I will be sure to mention it. But briefly, my pitch is, if you want to come here, then I would highly encourage coming here, knowing that you'll be exposed to so many brilliant and wonderful minds, and be excited about the ways in which that will force you and your scholarship to grow as well.
Terrific. Well, thank you very much. And I'm sure there'll be opportunities for you to say other things as we get through this. So you've got it kind of generally from the student perspective to give you more of a broader perspective from the faculty and administrative side. I wanted to invite Dr. Brilli to kind of speak for a few minutes. So.
Yeah, well, welcome. I just want to second what Jim and Claire were saying about how wonderful it is to see not only so many people, but so many people that come from so many different places and have so different and various interests, considering CMS as an option for their future. I also want to thank you for taking this time. I know this is one of the most important decisions you're making at this stage of your life. So we really appreciate you, the fact that you're carving out, a couple of hours to really think carefully about what we can offer. I think this is important because as to do with, setting clear expectations since the beginning and making sure that this is the right choice for you. So I really want to take this time to answer your questions, and I'm sure that my colleagues will do it at their best, but I also want to remind you that we can continue this conversation after this specific meeting, and you can always reach out to any of us with any question you might have. Claire was saying that this is a small community, which is true, and is also very well interconnected one. So if you send a question to the wrong person, this is never the wrong person, because this person will reach out to the one that has possibly the answer. So I was talking about myself a minute ago. And I will go on talking about myself, not just because I want to practice agoistry, but because this has to do with, the way in which I try to direct and think of CMS. As you might notice from my accent, I'm Italian. I was trained in Italy, as I was saying, in one discipline, philology and literature. Then I moved to France for like 10 years of my life. And there I was doing medieval history. And then I went through a number of postdocs in Switzerland, Germany, Montreal, and then finally I landed in Toronto 10 years ago. When I stepped into a CMS was the first time in my life that I felt at home. Was the first time that I could experience the fact that, everything that had been for me difficult to process until that moment, I was in two different disciplines. I wasn't dealing with too many languages. So I had this tradition of thinking of myself as always a little bit like an outsider. Of course, I was believing in the value of what I was trying to do with my research and with my education, but I wasn't so sure that the institutions I was working with were, thinking along the same lines. CMS is the place where this happens. Because really medieval studies here are conceived around a series of principles that somehow were speaking directly to my own vision of what medieval studies should be. And of course, the two reinforce each other in a continuous dialogue. So what are these principles? First of all, first-hand approach to sources. Claire mentioned Latin. As you will discover today, the Latin program, and I'm sure that you already know it, otherwise you wouldn't be here considering CMS as an option, but Latin and the Latin program is really one of the core programs of both the master program and the PhD program. But the reason why Latin is the key is because CMS is mainly focused, even though not exclusively, and we'll go there in a minute, on Western medieval times. And as you know, Latin was the shared language of reference at that time. So the reason why we put such a strong emphasis on Latin is because we want to educate, to train medievalists that will be able to approach most of the sources they need to work on, no matter the discipline, firsthand. Which basically means without any mediation, without depending on translator, without being in a condition of, being the second ones to assess the specific significance of a source. And together with Latin go a number of other disciplines. So codicology, manuscript studies, textual editing, paleography, diplomatics that we offer on a regular basis, exactly with the same goal in mind. So first principle, being able to read sources autonomously. A second principle for us is the interdisciplinarity. So Jim was mentioning that we have about 70 faculty that are affiliated in a way or the other to CMS. And these are faculty who might be Toronto-based, but also come from different institutions in North America, both Canada and US. And in some cases, we also have some external. This is very important to us because basically we're able to cover, which means to assist you with almost every topic in medieval studies, no matter the discipline. Then Cara will illustrate all the fields that we have, because then, of course, we must make sure that all of this makes sense. And it's not just an addition, a random addition of specialties and skills, but interdisciplinary certainly is a major point here. And this is embedded in your curriculum, both as a master's student and as a PhD student, because like in many BA, we ask people to specialize in at least 2 different fields, a major and a minor. So whatever you will produce as a master's student or down the road as a PhD student will somehow be the result of this cross-pollination between different disciplinary skills. So if you're uncertain about which disciplines you belong to, that's normal. And this is a place where you can explore this together with us. The third principle is the one of community. And of course, we try to decline community in many different ways. First of all, by trying to create an ambient that is, conducive to learning and friendly as much as possible and supportive. But we first of all envision it as a research community. So the moment you step into CMS, of course, you will be students, you will be master's students or PhD students at the beginning of your career, but at the same time, you will be considered as members of this community. And the way in which we do this is a twofold one. On the one hand, we make sure to have regular research activities in which students are involved. And by research activities, I refer to research lectures, graduate conferences, and so on. And it's nice the fact that we can assist you, I would say, to experience a smooth transition between the, your life as a justice student and your life as someone who is actively contributing to research. And the second way in which we do that is by making sure that our students have access to a specific research assistantship. So basically, during your degree, either because you apply or because this is already embedded in your graduate funding package as a PhD student, depending on your specialties, you will be asked to contribute to a specific research project. This can be major ones, like institutional ones. The Dictionary of Old English, there was someone interested in Old English who presented themselves a minute ago. In other cases, this can be faculty-led research grants. Professor Hogan now is running one of these, or this can be collective and trans-institutional research grants. And Jessica Lockhart is going to introduce you to one of these major projects that now we are working on. So I would say these are the 3 main principles and things that we can offer students. If this is something you're interested in, certainly CMS is the right place for you. Who is next, Jim?
Sorry, I think it's me.
Introduce you, Jim.
I just want to take a few minutes to talk about the MA program, and then Carol will talk about the PhD program. For those who are interested, the MA program is really initially was developed as a way of kind of preparing people for the PhD program at the center. We now take a much broader vision about it. It really is to introduce people into the scope and the breadth, really, of medieval studies, and it prepare them for doctoral work if that's what they're aiming for. We also, have students coming into the program who are going to go on to other professions outside the academy. I have a few students, for example, this year who are interested in finding what it means to be an archivist or to do curation of primary sources. And so we're trying to develop, kind of informal ways of kind of helping them discern how they're going to pursue that. There are other ways, other people who go into, the public service or the NGO sector. It's not just academics that we're supporting, but that really kind of is our initial and still our primary focus. The program is basically, one full credit, which means a full credit at the University of Toronto means it's a course that takes both semesters to complete, and that one full credit of Latin. If you have not passed the level 1 exam upon entry, and most of our students don't, and the idea is that they will be able to be ready to pass that by the end of the end of the second semester, and when we hold an exam in April. Passing the Latin exam is not a requirement to obtain the MA. You have to, the 1000 course of Latin is one that, is graded, and so you have to pass that in order to obtain the degree. But if you are thinking about going on to do additional work in medieval studies, aiming to try and pass the level 1 exam is a very good thing. We do expect you to have at least about a year's worth of coursework in Latin in order to qualify for entry into the MA program, because we don't want to set you up to fail. We want you to be able to kind of have a basic understanding of Latin grammar and syntax, and then we will then try and then the whole point of the program is to form you and shape you into becoming a good Latinist throughout the year, and we have a lot of support there. We'll talk more about that when we do a breakout group at the end of this general session. Then the additional components are 6 half courses or 3 full credits of courses, and for you to complete the MA. Some students select to do a thesis, which takes up 2 half courses of your requirement. The benefit for some is that this helps them discern whether they want to go on and do something like a PhD that has a large writing component to it, a dissertation. And so a thesis of 12 to 15,000 words is a great way to figure this out, of how you do this kind of research. The drawback is it means it limits the number of courses you can take. And one of the things I want to encourage students in the MA program really is to kind of explore maybe the disciplines they have not had before at the undergraduate level. And so I will encourage those who come with a BA in English to go and do a little bit of history, or even do a little bit of philosophy, or even religious studies. And those who've done religious studies, like, come in and do a course in Old English, or do something in literature, so that you get to see the kind of scope and really the breadth of medieval studies. Interdisciplinarity is in some ways two important concepts that connect to it. One is that it challenges you to think methodologically in a very broad way, so that can I think historically, but can I also think about it in using literary theory? Can I think about things in a philosophical kind of way in relation to being a historian or being a literature specialist? So kind of bringing together different methods of how you approach materials can be really, really liberating, and actually help you understand and explore new areas that people may have not actually focused on or discovered. But the second thing is that interdisciplinarity works because it's collaborative. It means you have to learn to work alongside other scholars. We still have this great myth that, the great humanist scholars are the solitary scholars who sit in their studies, surrounded by their books, thinking their deep thoughts and writing their brilliant pieces of work. And to some degree, there are moments you're going to have to kind of hive away yourself and write. But learning how to listen to one another and learning how to kind of work together on different things is, why we want you to be in class, because the courses are a collaborative experience. It is an opportunity for you to be kind of co-learners along with the prof, and and along with your fellow students on whatever the subject matter is. So those are the kind of basic components. If we accept you, we would encourage you to write the Latin level 1 exam in April. And we use that as a diagnostic tool. If you had a lot of Latin experience, so some of our people here have come out of the medieval studies program, undergraduate program at St. Mike's, and there's a strong Latin component there. You may be able to pass the level 1 exam. If you do, then you actually have freedom to complete 2 additional half courses in anything else. It doesn't give you your opportunity, or you can go ahead and do the 1001 Latin course and start prepare for writing then passing the level 2 exam. But even if you don't pass the exam in April, it uses a diagnostic tool and it gives you full access to our summer Latin program that can help kind of strengthen your work in that field. One of the things I always say to those who are interested in kind of vernacular literature or, don't see a prominent role for, their future research of Latin is going to help you understand the culture in which your focus of research takes place. Those who are working in the vernacular language, you'll see that there's this interconnectedness between vernacular language and Latin. So it will actually make you a better scholar of Old English or a better scholar of Middle High German, or even to some degree of those who are working in Icelandic or whatever. These things are actually, that's why Latin remains, a component of what we do and central to how we approach the program. As Elisa said, we've been primarily focusing on kind of the Western European Middle Ages. We're starting to expand that a little bit more. We have, faculty who work on the Mediterranean, so includes not only, Southern Europe, but also North Africa. We have scholars who are working in kind of medieval Eurasia, and South and East Asia. And we're starting to develop, hopefully we're waiting for a new program in global medieval studies to kind of act as a certificate program we can act to, and Carl will talk about certificate programs in a few minutes. So there are opportunities to explore things kind of outside the boundaries of what is normally considered to be, traditional medieval studies. And the global Middle Ages is a concept we're kind of figuring how we fit that with the kind of core commitments we have as a program. I think that's all I'm going to say right now. As I say, we're going to have breakout groups after we've all made our presentations, and then we can talk further about the program in any details. So now I will hand it over to Cara Gaston, who is the PhD coordinator. Cara.
Thanks. Goodness, I know so many of you are interested in the MA. I want to try to restrain myself in talking in too much detail about the PhD program. But also to try to talk about some things that are cool about it. So I should say, I work in English as well as in medieval studies. So I've always felt this kind of, I guess, like, I feel like sometimes I feel like I get to see medieval studies from the outside, and I'm always very happy to come into this community. And I think there are always a few things that strike me. One is just the enthusiasm and excitement of everyone here about the Middle Ages. There's no need to justify it. There's no need to apologize for it. Everyone here is thrilled to be studying the past and understands, not just in a nerdy way, loves it, but although that too, but also recognizes its importance and the kind of, I don't know, political or aesthetic or ideological investments that we're finding in studying the past. So, it's a great sort of pleasure to come into this community. As PhD coordinator, my responsibility is mentoring and advising PhD students as they work through the program. I should say, although I don't have the same kind of formal responsibility to master students, I'm always really happy to meet master students. I did a directed reading on classical reception with an MA student a couple of years ago, and it was a lot of fun. So any chance I get, it's really fun to work with students, in all the programs. In getting to know PhD students through our annual meetings, through mentoring, through conversations, one of the things that always blows me away about students at the center is how whatever they are doing, whether it's Old English and weaving, whether it's wonders and marvels or studies of memory, whatever they're doing it in a way that I don't know that any other student could anywhere else, or maybe almost nowhere else. The level of philological knowledge, whether or not it's always on display, it's always there. The level of codicological and textual expertise, it's unbelievable. And it really not only makes the projects happening right now exciting, but it makes me think like these people are just going to go on and they'll be able to do whatever they want. So it's such a pleasure to get to know the students here. Let's see. So talking about the PhD program, like I said, I'm trying to avoid going into too much detail. what I think I'll do is talk about the three main stages of the PhD program and some of the kind of distinctive aspects of each. Really broadly speaking, the PhD breaks down into three main sections. The first is coursework. That's usually the first 2 years. That's also when you're first two and then the third year as well, you're completing language requirements. The middle chunk is the special field exam, where you're doing some focused work with your committee, preparing to write your dissertation. And then the third chunk is the dissertation itself. The field exam, I should say, is basically the third year of the program. And then the dissertation is the next couple of years or so. So starting with coursework, we've already had this idea of interdisciplinarity and fields mentioned. Your PhD coursework is generally broken into courses dedicated to your major field and courses dedicated to your minor field. So Professor Brilli touched on this idea that you have multiple disciplines built in from the beginning. The sort of fields that we generally define, that you can organize your course according to, that didn't make much sense, but these are the fields: history, art history, languages and literatures, manuscript studies and textual cultures, philosophy, religious studies, theology, and minor field musicology. So there's a big breadth of fields. And I should say, in navigating this and all the sorts of things I'm going to talk about, you're assigned a mentor in your kind of area of interest right at the beginning of the PhD program. And you also have annual meetings with the PhD coordinator. So you're not just cast to the wind and choosing courses and thinking about your fields. We're there from the beginning to kind of talk you through that process. And if you're not sure what your major field and minor field should be, that's okay. We're also here to kind of help you figure it out, choose some courses as you're figuring it out, make sure that you're not going to end up in year 2 completely scattered, and just sort of plan things out and help you kind of find your way through. So that's sort of what the basic coursework looks like. In that sort of first year, another thing that you would be thinking about, and in fact, something you would think about even at the application stage, is whether you would be interested in a collaborative specialization. These are basically programs developed across multiple departments where you can do some extra work, usually a couple of particular courses, some extra courses in particular areas, maybe giving presentations. And this extra work adds up to a certificate in a particular area of interest. So there's a collaborative specialization in, for example, sexual diversity studies. There's one in classical and ancient philosophy. There's one in book history. And as Professor Ginther mentioned, we're currently developing, hopefully to very soon implement, one in global medieval studies. All of these specializations are a little bit different in terms of their requirements. It's a really useful thing actually to look into as you are applying, because it can be super, super useful at the application stage to know if that's something that interests you. But they're a great opportunity, not just to get sort of specialized expertise, but also to kind of meet a group of students from across departments with shared interests and to be part of a whole different community. Because as wonderful as medieval studies is, it's not always a bad thing to kind of have conversations with different communities. So that's something to think about early on. One other point that I wanted to note about those first 3 years, the coursework and also the special field year, is professional development. As I mentioned, I love that students in CMS love the Middle Ages, and I love that students are so often like following their stars and pursuing their academic love. And we want to support you in doing that, and also to support you in the practical elements of doing that, including both kind of practically succeeding within the PhD, building community, dealing with stress, giving conference presentations, maybe publishing articles, and then also with preparing for life after the PhD, whether that means searching for a job as a professor, or searching for other kinds of jobs, other jobs in the academy, jobs in archiving, curatorial jobs, government, NGO, all these sorts of things. So part of that first 3 years is a professional development seminar. You basically take a couple sessions of this seminar each year that are geared to that particular year. We have sessions that deal with all these things, conferences, stress. There's a session on EDAI issues, both from the perspective of students and as kind of budding instructors. It's something we think about as instructors too. Sessions on job materials, publishing, all these kinds of things. Sessions on jobs both within the academy and outside of it. I think it's a cool course partly because, largely thanks to Professor Brilli, we have a ton of CMS alumni who come and participate. Most sessions have at least one alumni speaker. And I think it's great. It's great for building community sort of beyond just who's in CMS in a particular moment. It's wonderful to hear this input. We just had a recent grad talking about conferences 2 weeks ago, and she was talking from such a useful student perspective about like navigating your first conference, paying for things, what to expect, making friends, all these sorts of things. So, so I think there's a really cool aspect of that course. And I should say, it's also, I think, a good community sort of building course. We usually have it the same day as our convivium talks every other week. So students will hang out after MST 1003. You know, the whole community is sort of welcome to a free lunch. And then we have the convivium afterwards. So there are these really nice days where you get to see lots of people. All right, I said I wasn't going to talk about the details of the PhD program at too much length. Those are the first few years. Those are obviously the most immediate questions if you're thinking about going into the PhD program. I won't go on at length about the special field, except to say that this is a year-long process that is really geared towards helping you find your dissertation topic and hit the ground running. So if you are thinking about, you know, applying to the PhD program and you don't have a full dissertation prospectus yet, don't panic. All of your coursework, and in fact, the entire special field process is geared towards helping you do that. That is something I would be really happy to talk about in more detail in breakouts, but I don't want to go on at too much length now. I will say both through the special field, oh, actually, I will say one thing about the transition from coursework into special field and dissertation. Obviously, a key part of that is forming your committee. You typically do that in the second year. Often based on who you've met in coursework, based on consultation with the PhD coordinator, based on looking at people in your subject area and reaching out to them. But one reason I wanted to raise that is Toronto is a complicated institution, and there's medievalists who work exclusively at CMS. There's medievalists who work at CMS and other departments. And there's medievalists at other departments who are absolutely thrilled to get involved with CMS students as supervisors or committee members. So there's really a broad range of expertise. And, you know, one role of PhD coordinator is just to help you navigate the sheer amount of medievalists around here. So once you form your committee, you go into the field exam process. And then, and I should say also by the end of third year, that would be when you would complete the languages. By year 3, you would need to pass the Latin 2 exam. And in saying by year 3, I mean, you know, by year 2, so much the better, but it takes people a couple of years and that's okay. It is a hard exam and it's fine. It takes a couple of years all the time. That's sort of the normal timeline. And there are also requirements to pass French and German modern language exams. So once you pass all of that, you go into dissertating. And the main point I want to make there is just that we really try to continue supporting you. I meet with PhD students each fall for their entire progress through the program, try to keep a sort of dialogue going, checking in, make sure you're okay. Of course, the primary support system is also your committee, and committee meetings are expected every spring with your full committee. But you know, your supervisor and committee members are also there to continue working with through the dissertation process. Like I think I've gone on for too long already, so I'm gonna stop now. But yeah, way more details to talk through if you would like.
Thanks, Carrie. It's a complicated program, and our website is pretty good in terms of laying out. And there's a what we call a vademecum document that kind of gives you a map. Maybe I'll pop that into the chat here. So that'll give you kind of a bird's eye view of the program. But yeah, there's lots to talk about. But the practical thing is that you all want to get your applications in since you can get a place here. So I've even invited Terry Louisy, our grad administrator, who kind of manages the administrative aspects of admissions to talk about that process. So Terry, why don't you come up and lead us through that?
Hey, hello everyone again. It's Terry. Glad to have you with us. I'm going to try to share my screen. You've learned a little bit about why you would want to apply for to CMS, interdisciplinarity and rigor and community. This is how you apply. You're going to need the minimum admission requirements. And for the master's program, it's an appropriate bachelor's degree or its equivalent with final year average of at least a mid-B from a recognized university. And if it's a doctoral program or a PhD that you're applying for, it'd be an appropriate master's degree or its equivalent with at least a B+ or demonstrated comparable research competence. Admissions is open, started on October 1st, and it closes on January 6th. So we welcome your applications up until that point. CMS website has detailed information on how to apply. And I can forward this, this presentation around afterwards. To apply, you just visit the link here. Once you're there, you'll create a personal profile to begin the application. And you're advised to set aside 30 to 60 minutes to include your personal information and academic history. You're going to be answering several questions regarding your preparation and study of Latin and other languages, modern languages. And also, we're going to, the application will ask you to share your career plans after completing the degree. If you're applying to the PhD in lieu of a personal statement, you'll answer questions about your research interests. You can pause and revisit the application up until you pay the application fee, after which you're not going to be able to make changes to this information. So be careful about that piece. Applicants submit information for 2 academic referees, and you're going to want to be sure to contact your referees in advance to obtain their email addresses, preferably from the university domain, and you'll want to inform them that they'll be contacted at that address by the U of T School of Graduate Studies. And that's because the system will automatically email an electronic submission request to each referee as soon as the information, referee information is entered on the recommendations page of the application. So to avoid multiple emails to referees, be careful to submit the request for recommendation only when you're ready. And if you need to change your referees, you're going to want to contact the graduate administrator email address, which is here. And I usually, I'm the one who monitors that most closely. Please note, it's only possible to change referees if you haven't yet submitted, if both have not yet submitted their letter for you. Now you can upload application materials, including unofficial transcripts, writing samples, etc., through your applicant status portal only after submitting your application and fee. When you're going through the application, you'll be sometimes wondering, where do I submit my writing sample? Well, you're only able to do that after you submit your application and pay the fee. And we're going to ask that you upload only 1 writing sample in English, and that should be about between 10 and 20 pages. Examples of the writing sample is published work or excerpts from your thesis to demonstrate writing as well as your ability to do research. You also need to upload an academic CV. One of the things you'll need to upload is transcripts as well at the time of application. And these can be scans of paper transcripts or a PDF of your academic record while you're applying. But once an offer is made, we're going to need an official transcript. And so scanned copies during the application phase. Scanned copies of transcripts must be up to date and include the transcript legend, which is usually printed on the back of the paper transcript. Because different universities have different ways of recording academic progress, and so it helps to have the legend. And to view the status of your application, including outstanding requirements, so that you know and can keep track of your application and the progress that you're making, you can just log into your account, the applicant status portal, and there's the link again. Now, there is an English language requirement for students who have completed their degree at institutions that don't teach in English. So applicants who have to consider and meet the English language requirement, they have to demonstrate an adequate level of proficiency in English. And this is regardless of the citizenship status or the country of origin. Again, applicants from universities outside Canada where English is not the primary language of instruction have to do an English language proficiency examination. TOEFL is a method of doing this that seems to be most popular, and in that case, you're going to want to achieve a minimum of 580 in the written portion of the exam and 93 in the online version, and a TWE score of 5. Finally, I just wanted to mention the U of T Center for International Experience. If you're an international prospective applicant, we suggest that you visit the Center for International Experience. They offer a wide range of programs and events to help support international students with their transition to Canada and to U of T. And they offer also a team of licensed international student immigration advisors who can provide support, advice, workshops, they have webinars. They actually have an event on November 5th too, where they're doing a Q&A on applying for a student permit, where students can ask all kinds of questions. So if you're an international student, you're considering applying to CMS, that's a really good resource. And so thank you, and we do hope to have you with us.
Thanks very much, Terry. I really want to re-emphasize the Center for International Experience. We're actually, as academics, even as administrators like myself, who are an advisor for a program in Curra, we're actually prohibited by law from giving any advice on international things dealing with visas or anything like that, which is a good thing because we're not experts. But the Center for International Experience, they are very well trained, and they'll be able to, and it can be a little daunting. There's a new process of requiring attestation letters for graduate students coming into the country from other places this year. And so there's a little more complicated process. So please, even if you haven't received an acceptance yet, making a contact there I think would be very important. So you just understand how they do things and how they can help you get through the minefield of international student visas and things like that. It's one of the things that Lisa Brilli mentioned at the very beginning is that we are a center of graduate education, but also a center of research. And we wanted to kind of give you a little taste of, what kind of people we kind of produce in terms of academics. And so we've asked Dr. Jessica Lockhart, who introduced herself early, who is a graduate of the center in 2017, and who has now this wonderful title of head of research for the Old Books New Science Lab. Just to talk briefly about her own research. One of the reasons why we invited her is because in addition to the literary research she does, she also works in digital humanities. And I find it fascinating. I've been involved in digital humanities for about 25 years myself, and I find it just wonderfully ironic that it's medievalists who really pushed the envelope in digital humanities. Those who are supposedly the most antiquated are actually in some ways really interested in kind of possibilities of what DH can do for research. So Jessica, why don't you take a few minutes just to kind of walk us through what you've been doing lately? So.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a real honor to get to talk to you folks. Dennis in particular, I mean, last night as a person from CMS, I had a dream that I was needing to remember my Middle Welsh, and it's been about 10 years, and I finally came up with like and in the dream the person was like really impressed, this medieval Welsh person I was talking to, and then I woke up and remembered that I used the phrase completely incorrectly. Anyway, so yeah, I'm here to talk about my experience of research, both as a graduate student at U of T, but also sort of giving you a snapshot of some of the different research initiatives and communities that are around. So some themes that you will pick up that are just artifacts of my own personal experience, the global interconnectedness and global Middle Ages, the digital humanities, which is now sort of our latest term is book science. Our lab was initially called the Old Books New Science Lab, from the Chaucer quote that new science comes out of old books, like new grain from old fields. But now, as you will see, there's a certain amount of more collaboration happening. So I'm just going to share my screen, if I may. And yeah, I'll try to avoid too many digressions and essentially try to give you a snapshot of some of the stuff that's happening around at the U of T that center folks are either involved in or leading, or that were influential for me. So the first community I want to talk about is the CMS's weekly tradition of Friday seminars and lectures, the Convivium series, that combines lunch and talks, as well as the student-organized work in medieval studies, or WIMS, which allows students to share works in progress at certain times in the year. WIMS coordinates annual events such as the pre-Kalamazoo Practice Your Kazoo conference, which encourages you to write your paper before you go to your major conference, and but more practically gives you a chance to hear feedback from your peers, hear each other's papers, so that when you en masse go to Leeds or Kalamazoo or another major medieval studies conference, you've already seen your friend's paper, so you can feel free to pursue your own interests as well. So I just mentioned these because I found this type of event completely pivotal in digging myself out of mental blocks during my time as a student, as well as developing my professional skills. But also this is a place where that collaboration and cross-pollination of ideas that Elisa and Kara and Jim have mentioned really starts to take place. So at CMS, whether you are, whatever your own research focus is, by the end of your time, you will know about Victorian forgeries of stained glass, you will know about monastic dress codes, Latin prose metrics, Boccaccio's feelings about Cicero, any number of these topics you will have sort of a passing knowledge of, and that background knowledge and that sort of habit of mind of curiosity about someone else's work is yeah, something that I found totally pivotal to my career. So now I'm going to transition to telling you about some of the other groups that are on campus. So the next group I want to tell you about is something called Practices of Commentary. It's funded by a Shirk Insight grant, and this project brings together scholars who work on practices of commentary, whether their field is biblical exegesis or Quranic interpretation, 10th century tantric Buddhism, modern social media. This is another of those interdisciplinary cross-pollination points. And yeah, they are incredible. They meet once a month. You can get in touch with them. Their habit of simply sort of comparison from places of expertise has also led to other groups making these kinds of silo lowering gestures, such as the Global Past Research Initiative. And yeah, on the material side, this is also a major strength at U of T. So I don't think that many of you are in the Greater Toronto area, but if you happen to be around between now and the end of December, there's there's an exhibition on at Massey College, which is one of U of T's colleges, that is sort of exploring the connectedness and also diversity of book forms across the world. And their purpose is partly to energize connections amongst people working on manuscripts and material books across U of T. So they're really wonderful. Now I'd like to talk a little bit about my own the projects that I'm most involved in. So Hidden Stories is devoted to new approaches to the local and global history of the book, working with community and researchers, conservators, librarians, knowledge keepers, and yeah, at U of T and also at, I think, 60 odd institutions around the world. We've got a $2 million US budget over 4 years, and it's really, really exciting to be a part of. If we have time later, I'd love to tell you more about this. We have, in addition to these 10 project research areas that you can see here, we're also supporting teams of local conservators who are working in Tunisia and Nepal, trying to safeguard some of like the world's oldest manuscript collections. So I found this incredibly powerful, both in terms of like researchers, but remembering that our research is connected to like living books and living people who are safeguarding those. And, you know, medieval studies can initially sort of seem as though it's detached from the real world, but it really isn't. And yeah, so that's been a really, really neat way of engaging with it. We're also working with colleagues in Pakistan and the States and the UK on new ways of studying, conserving, and protecting endangered birchbark manuscripts from Kashmir, especially, including those that have come to be in colonial Western institutions, as well as those that are still kind of coming out of the ground at archaeological sites. Yeah, it's super interesting. So the home of the Hidden Stories project is my own group, which is the Old Books New Science Lab, which has essentially since 2014 been an incubation and experiment space for digital medieval studies. This is our, that's our website. This is our lab room. That's our murder wall. We meet on Friday afternoons just down the street from CMS, and you're welcome to drop by anytime. This is our online Slack, which includes project channels, professionalization spaces, as well as what you're looking at is our paleography channel. Can you read this? There's an update in the Daily Cat. Take it that what you will. So the lab has a small core of full-time researchers like myself, librarians, administrators who are employed by our current grant, as well as a much larger community of undergraduate and graduate students and research assistants, computer developers, postdocs, faculty, and other sort of assorted friends of the lab. From our initial collaboration of digital approaches to medieval European manuscript studies, our community now includes global specialists in the physical and digital preservation of cultural heritage, data sovereignty, and relationship building with communities of origin, and scientific fields as well, ranging from collagen biochemistry, as you can see here, to AI, to micro-CT, and structural engineering. So at this point, I want to make a plug for an exciting research collaboration that we have been undertaking with the Thomas Fisher Rare Book Library, which is one of the main repositories of manuscripts on campus. So just within this past year, the Fisher has, and the U of T has received a generous donation from somebody by the name of Mark Andrews to help establish the U of T and centering especially around the Fisher's collections as a center for book science research. And as of this fall, we've seen the first fruits of this in a pilot project that's developing capacity for mobile multispectral imaging at the U of T. So in this pilot project, a postdoc by the name of Stephanie Leahy has been leading a team of graduate students who are working inside the Fisher Library to image a variety of manuscripts and printed materials to try to recover lost text. So they're leveraging advanced imaging techniques and methods alongside medieval studies classics, paleography, codicology, language training. So here's an example. This is a commentary on the Talmud, 15th century Sephardic hand. As you can see, this manuscript at some point in its life has like been incredibly badly water damaged, and every page looks like this or worse. So our team had been working on imaging this manuscript, and so this is what it looks like sort of in depth. Yeah, this is what it looks like once we're able to image it. So, and this was our sort of first attempt image that we got back. Stephanie, when I look at this picture, she's like, oh, we can do so much better now. So yeah, anyway, that's been a really neat thing is the team in there working to help researchers to sort of recover the ability to read and work with this manuscript. So here's another one, which is a fun game for you. So this is a fragment that came from a spine lining. It's been living at Massey College's Robertson Davies Library, and I will let you take a look at it and see what you notice. So, yeah, do any of you want to chime in? And I can't see the chat, so I will just say that those of you who have taken some paleography may recognize this as a form of what we sometimes call secretary hand and 15th century. And you may be able to make out like par la grâce de Dieu, roi de France, which is a pretty big clue that you're dealing with some kind of French royal document. So a couple of weeks ago, this is why I'm telling you about this, is that this is sort of currently on the pan sizzling. We were looking at this with a UV Dynolight digital microscope, and we noticed that this was a manuscript that would respond really well to multispectral imaging. So we threw it into the multispectral imaging machine, as well as we pulled in CMS medieval studies professor Sebastian Sebecki to take a look at it. So Sebastian took a look at it, and you noticed, of course, some additional features. So for instance, this is the name of the king, Louis or Louis, is noticeable, as well as interesting features like ink where you wouldn't expect there to be any on a document of this kind. So multispectral imaging as well gave us the rest of the text, and we've been working through it. And on the basis of this, Sebastian has been able to identify this as a letter patent of Louis XI, who has been nicknamed Louis the Prudent, Louis the Cunning, or Louis the Universal Spider, depending on your take on history. So this is a letter of remission, possibly to someone who's named Joan de Pontier or Portier. And so Stephanie and Sebastian have also been able to use the evidence of both the visual eye and the multispectral imaging to reconstruct the storage history of this document, including that weird interlineal text is transfer from the document having been folded, presumably by a Géant, relatively soon after it was made and stored like that for a while. So I'm sharing this example with you in depth, not only because it's hot off the press and I'm excited about it, but also because, and by the way, if you look at the U of T catalog, this is the image on it at the moment, which I'm super proud of. There's no greater honor. But I'm telling you about this because it was it's a current CMS PhD student by the name of Jack Lockhart who got us interested in multispectral imaging in the first place. Because he is currently leading a project of his own on trying to recover owner inscriptions on a manuscript that he is working on at the Fisher. And going forward from this year, this is also a plug that the Fisher have, on the basis of this experiment, decided to purchase one of these machines. So it will be available to researchers as a tool at U of T, including graduate students who are already getting trained on it. So That is the kind of thing that you can integrate into your research if you were interested. And the reason that I'm also mentioning this is that the way that this project unfolded has mapped against my own experience of being a CMS PhD, that graduate students play a significant role in shaping the research interests and culture of the institution. You're not just a passive recipient of learning, you're helping to build the community, and that's a really fun and powerful thing. So this brings me to the last little research community that I want to mention, which is new this year, a student-led reading group called the Looting Lab, which is based out of the Jackman Humanities Institute and is led by Isra Seymour, who is a PhD candidate with a criminology background, who's now in the Department of Sociology, but works on medieval manuscripts. So the group breaks down silos for the global study of manuscripts from the perspective of provenance, considering shared problems relating to the looting, dispossession, and illegal sale of cultural heritage, both historical and continuing into the present day. So Isra herself works on a collection that was looted by the British Army from a palace in India and is now based in London. So this group, they similarly meet once a month to share work, discuss readings, and host guest speakers. So these are just a handful of the research initiatives that are happening around U of T right now that medievalists are either leading or playing a significant role in shaping. Although they might appear very different, what they have in common is the same ethos, which is built on these premises of community, that we ought to share our works in progress and support one another, and that we benefit by being curious about each other's fields. And what they lead to, I think, is the knowledge that at U of T, your research links you into global network of scholars, conservators, librarians, scientists, communities around the world who are doing some really exciting things. And this is true, obviously, in other places as well, but at U of T, it feels sort of more closer to the surface than I've seen and experienced at other institutions. So just to conclude, in preparing for this meeting, I thought about the skills that I gained at CMS that I use on a regular basis, the skills I expect and rely on from the CMS graduate students who are part of our lab, and that I see my fellow alumni from my cohort using in their own positions. So this is the list that I came up with. Yeah, I hope this gives you a taste of a bit of the research culture at U of T, for at least from my CMS's perspective. So, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you so much. It's very exciting what you're involved in, but also just thank you for giving us a broader perspective on the kind of research. I think I just want to emphasize too that, yeah, one of the things why I myself, but my colleagues in general, like doing graduate education is because we get to participate in research and collaborate with students. It just really enriches the process very much. All right, so this whole thing is your time to have a conversation about the MA program, to answer any questions that you may have. So, and it really is just, you know, anything we haven't talked about, or maybe something you talked about, you want some further explanation, by all means. I think you can do the raise the hand thing, or we can simply, you know, if nobody is, you know, talking, we can just let somebody start talking. But so who has some, does anybody have any questions that you'd like to ask about the MA program?
Just for some clarification. So when it comes to Latin requirements going into applications and everything, what is sort of the status on still being in progress of sort of completing some of those undergraduate Latin requirements by the time an application is sent? Like, is that something that can happen? Would you prefer it to be all done and kind of dusted by the time those applications come in, or?
Yeah, no, that's a pretty common thing for MA applicants, that they'll say, I'm taking, you know, a full year of Latin. So by the time they finish their application, they've only finished one semester. And as long as it's, you know, on the transcript, it says it's in progress, or you're booked for the winter semester, then we consider that to be, you know, meeting the requirement. And so what happens normally anyways with an MA student, MA application, is that we offer you a conditional admission. And then you have to kind of demonstrate that you fulfill all the requirements by the time August rolls around. before we actually let you formally into the program. That's where you need your official transcript, but also we want to see, like, so if something terrible happened and you failed the, the Latin course in the spring semester, we'd have to have a conversation. But we're not going to put you as a, second class citizen or anything like that in terms of how we, adjudicate the applications themselves if you haven't finished all the Latin before you've applied.
So I know a lot of other places that do MAs and PhDs in classics or medieval studies will also require like a French or German like level of proficiency as well. Is that anything that is required here?
Not at the MA level.
Okay.
We only require you to have some proficiency in Latin and then take the Latin as part of the program. The PhD requires proficiency in reading with dictionary proficiency in 2 modern languages of scholarship, which are normally French and German.
Mhm.
Some students opt, on another language that may be more appropriate for their research focus. And as long as we can test them and provide, a way of assessing them, then we will certainly allow that. But for the MA, you don't need to worry about that. But if you are thinking about doctoral work down the road, I would encourage you to start thinking about, learning the modern languages that will be of relevance to your research. So
For sure. And I was
Okay.
also wondering what
Yeah.
kind of medieval language courses does Toronto offer?
Yeah, well, obviously we offer an Old English. Do we do Old Norse still, I believe? And Killian can help me out here.
Old Norse is usually done. It's not done frequently. It's often done as a directed reading, and then if there's kind of sufficient demand, sometimes we'll do. There have been kind of courses if there are 2 or 3 people who want to do it. I think it's still on the books, but it's really only Rob Getz who teaches it, I think, and Shannon
Yeah.
sometimes.
Right, and I know Brett Miles will teach sometimes Middle Welsh, but usually that often happens at a reading course unless we can get enough students for that to be that course. We at one point did teach Icelandic, but I don't think we teach that. Haven't taught that in a while. You can also do Arabic at Near and Middle Eastern Studies. One of the things I tell students is that you cannot do a modern language course as part of your MA program, but you can do a language of research, of primary source research as part of your program. I don't want you to be doing 3 or 4 languages. I really want you to think about the disciplines that are involved here. Well, we've had students who've done Arabic because that's related to their future research for their doctorate. So. Okay, and does that answer the question? Okay, great.
Yeah, sorry, I'm just gonna. Yeah, there are quite a few courses that are offered regularly. So, Old French is periodically taught,
Yes,
or
thank you.
or Old Romance, and generally, Brent, who's our Celticist, tends to alternate between Old Irish and Middle Welsh in kind of alternating years. And yeah, as Jim said, that's partly to do with numbers, but that's generally offered. So whatever is being offered this year, I don't know what he's teaching this year. It'll be the other language next year. And then various people are available to do directed readings. Professor Gosh sometimes has done directed readings on Old Frisian, I think. And there are lots of other possibilities. There's also Ge'ez, which is kind of ancient Ethiopian, which is taught through CMS. I think pretty much every year as well, and then other languages through kind of partner departments.
One thing I'll say here about, because we broached this notion of a reading course. We do encourage you to try and take most of your courses, regular courses that are in the scheduling. There are moments where MA students really want to pursue a certain idea. We don't have a course for it. We have a professor who has expertise in that area. And so we will allow an individualized reading and research course. Don't allow more than one for the MA student or for the MA program, simply because we want you to be in the classroom with your fellow students. I don't want you taking 3 or 4 reading courses, and that's not really the kind of collaborative program we're trying to facilitate here. But we do understand that if you're particularly interested in a topic and there's no course that allows you to pursue that, we can work with something on in terms of what the faculty can provide on an individual basis. So
So I guess this still goes along with like the whole Latin questions. When taking the test, do you have to be in Toronto or can you do it from your like could I set it up with UBC and kind of do it from my home university? Or
So
do you-
yeah, we've done proctored exams, but usually that's because we offer an external program for other graduate programs or even undergraduate programs that don't do any Latin, and we allow them to have us gain a certificate from us. So we have a methodology for proctoring. What we've been doing now, though, is allowing online people to take the exams online. If you can't be, particularly if you're an incoming student, and we really do want to encourage you to take the spring the April exam. Not only one of our MA graduates pointed this out to me, which I thought was a very good observation. It's not only about getting a diagnostic tool to find out where you are in terms of your Latinity, but also learning just kind of for to be very clever about this, the rhetoric of how we assess people here, what the exam looks like, because in some ways our examination process is really unique. Nobody else really does it the way we do it, this idea of site passages. And we've modified the MA exam a little bit. So even just taking it to figure out how we test you to assess where you are at that, I think is an important thing. That said, we put all the past exams online on our website. So, make your way through. It'll give you a sense of what our expectations are. And I think in the last couple of years, we've done a very serious review of the Latin program, and I think we're being more transparent about what those expectations are. So, for example, we have given a kind of a reading list of what texts kind of qualify as level 1 exams, and those are a level 1 reading, and those become the basis for what happens in the classroom, but also where we're going to take excerpts for the actual exams themselves. We've also set up a vocabulary list of an expectation of these are the 1,600 words you should know like the back of your hand. And I know that sounds huge, but again, this is why we have the Latin that meets 5 times a week, once a day, because to kind of iterate and reiterate everything that you need to know. So you have a pretty clear idea of what the expectation is, where the goal is on this. So we can, Devin, if we do accept you into the program and you want to write the exam, we can set it up online for you. And that is a possibility. Killian, I don't know if you want to add anything about the Latin that I've missed or.
No, I think you've covered the main points. Yeah.
Okay.
And if you're admitted, do have a go, even if you think like really there's it's worth trying it out, as Jim said, to get a feel for it, but also it's the best way for us to get a sense of where you're at with Latin kind of before you come into the program.
Great.
And is the summer program still offered?
Yes, we run 3, an intro, and then the level 1 and level 2 plus review sessions in between. And if you are accepted, you can take those courses for free in the summer as another prep. So
and
thanks.
That was a really magical sort of first introduction to CMS when I was coming in, because, and I don't think that it's still running, but it can always be revived. The summer Latin program was also recruiting for our amateur softball team, the Papal Bulls. And we were the worst softball team that's ever existed because I don't think any of us had ever thrown a ball before. Anyway, so it was a great moment and a chance to join community as well. And in the fun side of Latin as well, there are several Latin Scrabble sets hidden in the Great Hall. So it's a really nice part of the community.
We bring those out for the winter party or the for that.
First, I had a few questions concerning the admissions. It was discussed. I was wondering for the writing sample that we submit, does it have to be medieval focused, or can it be non-medieval, the writing sample that we submit?
For the MA, you certainly can. We prefer a medieval topic, but what we're looking for is where are your writing skills, all right, and is your capability to put together an argument, how you use evidence and things like that. So if you've written something that, for a 19th century European history course that you were really proud of, and the prof said this is really brilliant, really demonstrates your prowess, then yeah, you can put that in. Our preference, though, would be, we want to see how you work with the sources from the Middle Ages to some degree. And I would just give a little explanatory note that, I haven't taken any courses in the last year, for example, in medieval, and this represents kind of my skills as a researcher. That gives an understanding of why, and it's just not out of left field. So just give a little bit of a note at the beginning. Okay, that's question number one.
Yes, and this is a very specific question. I know may not apply to others, but coming from the Quebec system, where I know you require like post-secondary education, the transcripts and everything. Does that also include CEGEP here that we have as well?
We don't require CEGEP transcripts. We just require proof, demonstration that you completed your BA and what your GPA is, things like that. Yeah, because I know I'm smiling because on Wednesday I had a student ask me the exact same question, because they're like, how difficult it is to go get my CEGEP transcripts. It's like, I understand. So you're good. So
okay, thank you so much.
This is also kind of two. So I guess the first part. So for those of us with, I guess I would say, limited institutional access to Latin options within the Canadian sphere here, do you have any institutional kind of distance learning recommendations or anything of that sort that the CMS kind of options or endorses or anything, or recommendations in that vein? Just because I don't have a lot kind of going on my end right now. And then I have kind of a second part, but I'll let you answer this one if that's.
I'm gonna pass the buck here to Killian, who knows the landscape so much better than I do in terms of what's available. Do you have any suggestions here, Killian?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a few things, and I think one is certainly to, if you are admitted, to kind of come in the summer and take advantage of the courses, which the beginners course, I believe, even as an incoming student, you would still have to pay separately for, but the level 1 and the level 2 courses would be free, but they're in person, they're here. In the meantime, yeah, there are a few places that offer online Latin teaching, I believe. And so I don't know how that would work in terms of getting course credit. Simon Fraser has been offering distance learning Latin for a long time, SFU, and so they may still be doing that. UBC were for a while. I don't know if that's still going or not. I should ask, I'll find out. And I don't know, I mean, I don't know whether U of A or Calgary offer online learning. I kind of feel like U of A might, through the main history and classics department, because they have a lot of people there who have been doing very progressive work in language pedagogy and I think in distance learning. So I would check their offerings as well. That's pretty local to you, even if it is online. Those would be my suggestions. I don't think Athabasca does any Latin. McEwen might have some online stuff as well. But it's a little bit of a mix, and then it's also worth talking to your, because you're still in your program, right, at Augustana?
Yes.
Sorry?
Yeah, I'll be finishing up next.
So it would be good to talk to your registrar about the logistics of, enrolling in a course at another institution and how that would work in terms of credit. I don't really know the Alberta system. I know the BC system, where that is a little bit easier to navigate. But I don't know how it works in Alberta. So that would be a good question for like a faculty mentor or a registrar.
For sure, thank you. And then just, sorry, while I've got you here, this one should hopefully be quicker. Just to kind of clarify, that by when you kind of specify a year of instruction, is that just kind of regular sort of 2-term system, fall, winter, that would be done through that period there?
Yeah, I mean, I think the ideal is kind of 2 semesters, of Latin as a minimum, and that Yeah, and that's not quite a full run through a kind of a core textbook, but it's a, you know, it would get you about 2/3 of the way through something like Wheelock or, you know, a standard Latin, and that's, you know, that's kind of the minimum, you know. If you have more than that, that's great, but you know, but that's kind of what we would like to sort of see by the time you're kind of like, by the time you're here as a bare minimum. Yeah, as Jim was saying, you know, we've done a lot of work on the program to kind of fit better with the background and the training that our students have these days. You know, and in general, that means not as much Latin as would have been the case, you know, 15, 20, 25 years ago. So, you know, we're aware that not everyone has had a chance to do Latin, has had a chance to do a lot of Latin, and we kind of want to make sure that we're able to bring in good students and then help them with that when they come to the program.
I guess I have a question about transcripts. So do you just have to submit like the one you get your degree, like the university you get your degree from, or like I did a study abroad, so do you want that transcript as well?
You certainly, that certainly can help, particularly if you did something in medieval in the study abroad, because it demonstrates the, you know, the breadth of your learning. And as I say, you know, you can give us informal transcripts, you know, for the application, and as long as we receive, you know, the formal transcript where the degree is conferred by August, then you'll be good to go. So
I also have a question about transcripts. Straight out of high school, so more than 15 years ago, I went to college to be a furniture maker, and this has no bearing in my mind on this application. Do I need to have that transcript anyway?
no, I don't think so. I mean,
Okay.
it really is the most recent degree that you have. I mean, we've had applicants who have been in the workforce for a decade, and you know, and we'll say, yeah, whatever your last degree was would be the kind of the most pertinent one. And I think it's fantastic that you've been trained to be a furniture maker. I think that
Yeah, it's great.
the materiality of the Middle Ages could actually be something of access to you. So, but yeah, no, you'd be fine without that. Okay.
Okay, and then a second question, which is how many for the MA? How many students generally apply, and how many students are accepted out of that batch? If you know the number.
Yeah, I mean, we normally get between 25 and 40 applications each year. We do not have a quota imposed on us for our MA students. It really is up to us how many we want. And so, I mean, you know, as I said on Wednesday, if I got 25 amazing applications, I'll admit all 25. I mean, it's it's really kind of meeting the minimum requirements. There is a bit of comparative within the pool that you're part of. You know, and so that kind of develops what we think is the threshold for that given year. But like, you know, when I first started as you know, as associate director 4 years ago, and I was doing admissions, we had 4, 5 to 6 students in the MA program. This year I have 11. So, you know, and we actually, I think we had 14 coming, but you know, sometimes, you know, by the time August rolls around, people have had to have a change of heart. I think we've had one person who deferred. So, and we are willing to consider deferrals, so that, you know, if we make an offer, we'll allow you to defer for 1 year if that's a necessity. So it's not like there, you know, with the PhD program, there's only so many slots available, because we do have quotas built into that, and so yeah, it's a little more competitive than this is. We still want, you know, we really want students who we know can succeed. We don't want to set somebody up who's really enthusiastic but doesn't have the basic skills or experience in order to be able to do well here. I don't like setting people up to fail.
Sure.
So that really is the kind of thing, is that, you know, do you have the necessary you know, experience and skills in order to be successful as an MA student here? That really is kind of how we kind of think about who we admit. So.
You said before that the MA program was originally meant to prepare students for the PhD program. I was wondering if this sort of connection still exists, and for the students after the MA program who decided to pursue a PhD, do we see them, a lot of them continuing in Toronto, or just applying to different parts of the world, or yeah?
Yeah, so I mean, I would say what has changed is that, I mean, when the MA was first developed, it was solely That was the only reason it existed, was to get people ready for the PhD at Toronto. Now we see that it actually can act as a foundation for going on and doing a PhD in a single discipline at another university, going into another career outside of the academy. We're thinking in much broader terms, but yeah, we still have, you know, I don't know, a significant number of, you know, majority of students who apply for our PhD from the MA program. And we do have students who do, I think, I'm trying to think about this year, let's see here, I think we have two students from the MA program who are in the PhD. And I've, you know, and then current students right now in the MA program, already some of them have started talking about they want to apply to us. So, and we encourage that. You know, so it's, and I think in some ways there is an advantage because you get to know the faculty, you get to understand the ethos of the center, and so you can make a very strong application for the PhD. And we encourage that. We don't want to, you know, chase you away at all, right?
Okay. Also another question.
Yeah.
I'm in junior right now, so I
Uh-huh.
still junior summer before I start my application in senior
Yeah.
year. So I was just wondering if you would recommend me taking the Latin level 1 courses during the summer, and like would that prepare me or put me on advantage for the application, or would you suggest that, well, I've already had like 2 years of university level Latin already, so would you suggest that it's okay if I like it's just I don't really have to take the classes now?
If we think about it in terms of minimum requirements, I'd say you are kind of sound good to go already. I don't like to approach Latin that way. It's like the more Latin you can take, the better off you are. What strategy you need to do? I may want to talk to your faculty advisor at your institution. You're at Notre Dame, is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. So I mean, there are plenty of people who could really advise you. Kelly, I don't know whether you want to give some additional advice here.
Yeah, I mean, I think Jim's kind of covered it. If you would like to, you could try, and I think what I would suggest, if you kind of feel like coming to Toronto for a few weeks in summer would be a fun thing to do anyway. You know, what I would suggest is take the level 1 exam in April online. You can register to do that externally. And see how you do, because you might, if even like you might even pass that straight away, or you know, and then come and do the level 2. Like I will say, we are wonderful. We have a wonderful program. It's really good. But honestly, if you're at Notre Dame, you have really, really great Latinists there to work with. And I think, you know, there's a way in which it would be good to keep doing more Latin there, and take kind of whatever Professor Mueller is offering in particular, you know, when that comes up. But you've got lots of other things to think about. You know, you want to think about your broader formation as well. And so it's a little bit of that question. And you know, and the general advice I give to people is the more Latin you can do before you come here, the kind of like the more manageable you're going to find, particularly the MA year, right? But there's always a trade-off. There's always other things to do, right? Yeah. So again, as Jim said, you're good as it is. If you think it would be fun to come, and there are grants to kind of come through CARA, through the Medieval Academy, you can look into that. But you know, you are probably in the best place other than here for medieval Latin anyway. Anyway, so you know, you're good.
Yeah. Don't tell anybody we said that, okay?
Yeah. I'll deny it.
It's funny because years ago, Frank Mantello, who was at Catholic U, used to do an intensive course in the summer at Latin intensive course at Notre Dame. But I mean, he's since retired. I don't think they've done a summer program since. So I mean, unfortunately, because you will have not been admitted yet, you would have to pay for any kind of program you came up to do with us. I mean, so you certainly would be welcome, you know, but you'd have to think about cost in terms of travel, residence, and also the fees to pay for the program. So look around and see what Notre Dame can offer you. And it is a really good program. I think it's very effectively run. It's intensive, but I think all the students have really appreciated it. And I think, you know, I've never come across an experience where students said, "Oh, that didn't prepare me for the exam, you know, even if I didn't, you know, pass it when I needed to pass, you know, when I expected to pass it or whatever, it wasn't because the summer program wasn't being the support that I needed. There were always usually kind of other circumstances. So I think you'd really benefit from it. But yeah, if you've got the support for doing it, then that you know, and maybe you can contact either, you know, myself or Killian about this. In terms of the logistics of it as the program. I think actually, Killian, you're running the program this upcoming summer, right? All right, so he's the man to pester about.
So my university, there's only one medievalist on the history in the history department. And she's my thesis supervisor. So but I was wondering about references because I'm also an English literature minor because I've gotten a lot of those medieval classes through the English department, but all of my higher level seminars have been with like history professors who are not medievalists. So do you prefer the other referee to be someone who who like has more experience like in those higher level seminars, or would it be better to then have a medievalist from the English department right that second?
I don't think that the department sourced matters. I mean, I think you should have, if that person is going to be your thesis, your honors thesis advisor, definitely ask them if they'd be willing to write your reference.
Yeah, well, that's why I'm like, I have that one sorted.
Yeah. The second one,
the second one that I'm more curious about.
And again, all we want from that. So the two things that I ask, and we give a guideline to our referees for you guys, is one, can they attest to your capabilities that you're making claims about, you know, and secondly, are you teachable? You know, do you know, not only do you want to learn, but you're open to learning. Because I mean, and I'm sure you've run across them. There are people who are, you know, brilliant, but they think they've already know everything. They have nothing left to learn, and that's not the kind of student we want.
Yeah.
You know, we want the student to say, you know, hey, I want to work hard. I know things, but I need to learn more. That's the kind. And so that's, I mean, and so if it's a person who's taught you at second or third level, you know, second or third year, you know, but can attest to that, those two things, that your capabilities and you're teachable, then that's absolutely fine. But let me say, you know, you are very welcome to contact me after this if you have any additional questions, if you didn't feel like, you know, your question, you didn't want to ask it in front of everybody, or you have follow-up questions. I'm very happy to have a conversation with you over email. I'm happy to have another Zoom conversation. You know, if you happen to be in Toronto, you can come and have a face-to-face, an in-person meeting with me. You know, so anytime up to the application process is due, I'm happy to talk to you. For those who are domestic students, who are Canadians or permanent residents, I just wanted to mention that there is the Canadian Graduate Scholarship for Master's students, the CGSM. It is due on the 1st of December. You submit it through SSHRC, but you identify the university that you want to do the program. So you would identify University of Toronto. Toronto, I think, has about 124 slots for the CGSM in the humanities and social sciences. And we've always had at least one, sometimes two MA students that get CGSMs. They're about $17,000, I think. I think they've gone up to $27,000 now for the year. If you have any questions about that, I'm very happy to answer questions about that as well. I do want to tell you that, unfortunately, I do not have a regular funding source to provide financial support for our students at the MA level. It varies from year to year. And I am, you know, I'm a bit of a pit bull with this and try and make sure I can find some money. But I just can't make any guarantees at this stage. I might be able to make some offer to those who we admit when we actually start rolling out offers. But again, I really, at this point, I can't say. It's just one of the unfortunate things about this is that we don't have a regular funding stream for the MA program. So sorry, I didn't mean to end on such a downer note. I hope you're still excited about the program. And I really look forward to reading all your applications. I just want to thank you again for taking the time to spend with us and to talk about this. I'm even happy to look at the research statement that you want to apply if you want to do your application. I'm happy to give feedback on that. because it can be a little daunting. It's the first time you write this kind of thing, but learning how to write grant applications or funding applications is an important skill set you'll need to develop regardless of what industry you end up in. So anyways, all right, folks, thanks for your time. Have a wonderful weekend, and I look forward to talking with you later.